Hey guys, what is up? Welcome to the Soulscast, the podcast all about the Souls series. And this is episode 19, so thanks for coming by, sticking around. I took an incidental 2-week hiatus. I didn't mean to, but as I explained in episode 18, which I just finished recording, I just didn't have the time. I'm going to try my very, very, very best to make sure that doesn't happen again. Because I really like these to come out every week, and I know they don't have a lot of viewers and listeners. Episode 17 that I released on YouTube had, I think, my least amount of views out of any of them. I think I had 5, and before that my least amount was 6. I know I'm not popular and I'm not looking for a lot of views, but most of the episodes, at least half, if not a little more, they have like 20 views. If I had 20 dedicated fans that listened every week, I would be over the moon happy. I think that would be amazing, and we could just get nice discussions going, like a nice, really closed group, just talking about Souls. If I had 20 people like that, I would be more than happy. We'll get there. We'll get there. I'm not too concerned. So at any rate, thanks for coming by. Welcome. This is episode 19, as I said. I'm gonna try to jump right into it because I did just record an episode, but all right. Let's just get going. Oh, hold on. Also, I'm gonna try to make this a little shorter than usual, and I'm going to try to make it so I don't have to edit it afterwards, so I can just pump these out because I would like it to come out very, very soon. So let's get into it. My name is Shane. You know that. I actually don't think I said that in the last episode. So if your very first episode was episode 18 and you have no idea who I am, thanks for stopping by, and I'm very sorry that I didn't say my name. Maybe I didn't say my name. I don't know. I've had 1 1/4 beer, and I'm feeling a little silly. That sounds pretty lame, but I have not eaten anything since like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, so I'm incredibly hungry, and I'm just drinking beer instead. And this Red Hook Extra Special Bitter is very good. Okay, my name is Shane. You can find me on social media. Instagram, Kalameet. That spells Calamite. I don't post as much as I used to. I used to just post video game stuff. Now I just kind of post whatever I want. Twitter is the same handle, but replace the L with a 1. So Ka1Ameet. I don't tweet a whole lot either, but yeah, whatever. And then YouTube, which is what I've really been into lately, is VG Bosses 24/7, like video game bosses 24/7, because on my YouTube I upload boss battles. I upload boss battles from any video game I play, and then I upload the solo Soulscast, which I'm assuming this is where you're listening to this podcast right now. I've been uploading, like I said last episode, I just finished uploading all my Demon Souls boss battles, and I just got back into Dark Souls, and I'm uploading those. I just uploaded on Tuesday morning Quelaag, Ceaseless Discharge, and the Iron Golem. And I plan on probably uploading a couple more tonight. So, that's that stuff. What I'm playing is no different than it was 40 minutes ago when I said it. But I'm grinding through Dark Souls 3 for the Platinum. I just beat Demon Souls. I'm playing through the original Dark Souls again. I just got into the Artorias DLC. And then, also, like I said, I'm probably going to start Final Fantasy Mystic Quest for the Super Nintendo soon, and then Medieval, because I don't know how to pronounce it, for the PlayStation. I'm hoping to start all that soon. But let's hop right into it. Today, I'd like to talk about Demon Souls bosses. Since I just played through Demon Souls, it's very, very fresh in my mind. I don't have any notes, so this is going to be one of my off-the-cuff, stream of conscience kind of episodes. But it's just bosses, so I think I can talk pretty good about that. And I feel like that's kind of what I did for my Dark Souls bosses episode. But and this game has so few bosses compared to like Bloodborne and Dark Souls 2 especially, that it shouldn't be too hard. So I'm just going to kind of run through, talk about some of my favorites, some of my least favorites, the hardest, the easiest, the ones that look the best. Overall, this game, and it's thought of by many too, it's like the general consensus of this game has the easiest bosses. And it probably does. In fact, I know it does because I beat almost every boss on my first try. I died to the Tower Knight like 3 or 4 times, probably 4 times. That was before I got my Demon Souls legs back, as it were. So I died to him probably 4 times. Otherwise, I beat Penetrator on my first try. I died to Old King Allant twice. So we'll say I died to Tower Knight 4 times and Old Allant twice. So that's 6 times. And I think the only other boss I died to was the Man-Eater. He killed me once because he pushed me off the bridge. So that's 7. Out of the like 17 or 18 bosses there are, I only died 7 times. So that's pretty good. And the Vanguard tutorial boss, actually, if you want to count that. So they're definitely easy. But you can clearly see the foundation for bosses and what they would do later on in the series. I was thinking of doing a full episode of just what bosses draw their direct inspiration from Demon Souls bosses. Maybe I'll go over a few right now. I just fought the Iron Golem in Dark Souls very recently, a couple days ago, and maybe I never realized it until just now because I just played through Demon Souls. But he's like a carbon copy of the Tower Knight, basically. He looks a little different. He doesn't have a shield, but he's a huge knight, and you have to hack at his ankles, and then he falls over, and then you can attack him there. And that's the exact battle with Tower Knight. Tower Knight, you have to hit him in the ankles until he falls over, and then you can attack his head for big damage. Iron Golem, you attack his ankles till he falls over, and then you can attack him regularly. And so it's like the same exact battle. And I personally think Iron Golem is one of the crappier battles in the original Dark Souls. The Fool's Idol, which is the boss of 3-1, the Tower of Latria, is the first boss that employs clones throughout the battle, which is a trope that Dark Souls has used a lot. Battles like the Crystal Sage from Dark Souls 3, where when you get like halfway through, it starts spawning clones of itself. Even like the Pontiff Sullivan battle, where he kind of summons a clone of himself, like a ghost or whatever you want to call it. I can't think off the top of my head, but there's many more bosses that do that. A boss like Phalanx, who's the very first boss in the game, not counting the tutorial. He is like the archetype for the battle with one monster boss that's surrounded by regular enemies. Like maybe a Deacons of the Deep sort of situation, or maybe even like the Royal Rat Vanguard from Dark Souls 2, something like that. And then there's a boss like the Man-Eaters, obviously, which starts off as one Man-Eater, and when you get the first one down to either like half health or a certain time has passed, like 90 seconds, a second Man-Eater joins the battle. And the Souls series might have a boss like that in like every single game, because obviously Dark Souls 1, it's the Bell Gargoyles, where you fight one, and then after a certain amount of time, a second one joins in. Although that one only has like half its health, or maybe even less. I'm not sure why. But that's like a direct inspiration from the Man-Eaters. And then you have a battle like, well, I guess, I'm trying to think, the Belfry Gargoyles or the Dual Dragon Riders from Dark Souls 2. Or maybe like the Twin Princes from Dark Souls 3, where you have to fight Prince Lorien and then Prince Lothric comes down. So that kind of set the groundwork for that. I'm trying to think. I guess you could say Dragon God kind of set the stage for like the stupid puzzle kind of bosses, like the Bed of Chaos, maybe the Executioner's Chariot, the kind of like the gimmicky sort of battles, maybe even like Curse Rotted Greatwood and High Lord Walnir from Dark Souls 3. All this stuff was already done in Demon Souls, and it's amazing to see it. So that's kind of my first thought. The bosses might be easy, but they laid the foundation, the very important foundation for the whole Souls series. And each game brings its own unique bosses that might have been copied in games after that. But Demon Souls started it all, and obviously it should have, because it was the first goddamn game. Now, I'm going to talk about... I'd like to talk about... Okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to quickly go through each boss in each world and just talk very briefly, maybe even 30 seconds on them. World 1 is Boletaria Palace. So you fight Phalanx. He's a giant blob, and he has many, many little blobs that guard him. So you just kill them, you kill him. He can't even attack you. He is attackless. And he and all his little minions are weak to fire, so he's very easy. The boss of World 1-2, as I've already mentioned, is the Tower Knight. Oh, not... Not to mention the Tower Knight is the direct inspiration for the Iron Golem. Going to Bloodborne, it has a lot of similarities to the One Reborn battle. In the Tower Knight battle, you have to go. It's in a large like courtyard, and there's stairs that lead up and like around the whole arena. And there's like maybe 8 soldiers with crossbows that sit up there. That if you don't go and take them all out, they just shoot at you the whole battle, and it makes it, I would assume, impossible. I've never actually tried to fight the Tower Knight without killing all those guys first. Maybe I should try that. But that's exactly like the One Reborn from Bloodborne, which is pretty close to the end, where you have to go up and kill all these, I don't even remember what they are. They're enemies that shoot projectiles at you. So you have to go kill them before you can even fight the boss, because they're just bombarding you the whole time. But he's the boss of 1-2. You basically seem to stay in between his legs, run in between his legs and get behind him, hack at his ankles. He has some attacks that are actually pretty powerful. Like I said, he killed me like 4 times. You can kind of get stuck on him. He has a giant spear and a giant shield. And he can shoot magic, but he only shoots magic if you're up on the higher deck trying to kill the crossbow guys. But stay between his legs, hit his ankles, he'll eventually fall over. He can hurt and kill you when he falls over if you're low on health. Be careful about that. But just go between his legs, hit him, then he'll fall down and hit his head, and his head does massive damage. I'm going to skip the next 2 Boletaria bosses because you can't fight them until you kind of progress in the game. World 2 is the Stonefang Tunnel, where you fight Armor Spider in the first level, which I talked about a little bit in episode 18. He's a giant armored spider. He shoots fireballs. He shoots a sticky web that makes you very, very slow, makes you unable to run or roll. And then if you get close to him, he has like melee attacks. As I mentioned in episode 18, he was a boss that I used to greatly fear, and I hated fighting. This time, I just ran up to him and smacked him around. So he wasn't too hard. Hard Bosses is the name of the game for World 2-2, which is the Flame Lurker, who I used to consider, if I had to rank the top 10 hardest Souls bosses across all the games, which, spoiler, may or may not be a podcast I'm going to do at some point, Flame Lurker would have absolutely been on that list. And I feel like now I can't put any Demon Souls bosses on a list of the hardest bosses because they pale in comparison. So if I'm going to do a hardest list, it might have to be like hardest on my very first playthrough. Because then Flame Lurker would be on there, and the Man-Eaters would be on there, and stuff like that. If I'm doing just hardest bosses, no Demon Souls boss are going to be in like the top 50. Because they're all so easy. But Flame Lurker is very fast, he jumps around, he's fire-based, he has some fire AoE attacks. He's unbelievably weak to magic, though, so if you're a sorcerer that has magic, or if you have the sticky white stuff that you can imbue your weapon with, he's pretty easy. Which I can't believe I'm saying, because I always used to think of Flame Lurker as like this untouchable, godly thing that was just impossible to fight. World 2-3, the final boss of that is the Dragon God, who, it's funny, I never realized it until this guy I watch on YouTube, his name is the Democracy, which I actually talked about in episode 17, and I meant to link to his YouTube in the description, and I totally forgot. So I'm going to do it today in this one. But he does a lot of, he ranks Souls bosses, and he talks about the Dragon God. They did a lot of marketing around him, and he's on the back cover of the game. If you have the game up on the PS3 like hub, it shows like a little square of the game, and he's the one that's there. If you watch the beginning cinematic, he's at the very end. He comes up like he's a god. He's a gigantic dragon god. So you would think the fight with him would be like this really big ordeal, but it's like a puzzle fight. You just hide behind columns and then smash rubble, and hopefully he doesn't get you. You fire 2 giant arrows at him, and then he's basically dead. So it's, I never thought about it like that, like how much of a letdown it is compared to like how big they pump this guy up, but he's lame. World 3-1, the Tower of Latria, which I'm going to say real quick, the Erythril dungeon in Dark Souls 3, I don't know how to pronounce that word. I find it very, very hard. That dungeon is basically like copy and paste Tower of Latria. I was shocked, like the layout of it, the fact that it has cells you can go into that have holes that lead into other areas that you couldn't normally get into. It's like almost the exact same area, just with way updated graphics. They even have annoying ass enemies instead of Demon Souls with the octopus squid head guys that shoot their magic at you. They have these assholes with like these fire pokers that actually take away your physical health. Your health bar drains down to like 50 hit points. So anyway, Demon Souls, the boss of 3-1 is the Fool's Idol, which anytime I look up any sort of list of like easiest bosses, like that guy Democracy does, Fool's Idol is always in like the top 10 easiest bosses. And let me tell you, if there's one Souls boss across the entire series that I have a hell of a time with that's considered easy, it's the Fool's Idol. It's one woman. I think she has 4 arms and she floats and she does a little bit of magic. But you attack her and she disappears, and when she reappears she has like maybe one clone with her that shoots magic. And hitting the clone doesn't take away the boss health. It has its own health meter. And every time, if you attack the normal one a certain amount, she disappears and reappears. Every time she disappears and reappears, I think she has more clones with her. And they're all shooting magic at you, and I find it a hectic battle, and I always have a hell of a time. If you don't believe me, just go onto my YouTube, VG Bosses 24/7, and watch my Fool's Idol fight. It's pathetic. In fact, I'd almost say that in this particular playthrough, I had more trouble with Fool's Idol than I did with the Man-Eater. Man-Eaters. Man-Eater, coincidentally enough, is the boss of 3-2. So the middle boss of the Tower of Latria. After you go through 3-2, which is a decently tough area. I didn't mention it in my episode 18 that I just did, but it's a little bit tough. Even now, when I just cruise through the game pretty easily, it was a little annoying. I think by now there's really no chance to spoil the surprise of the battle, where you go in and it's like a gargoyle, basically, a gargoyle-looking sort of humanoid creature. It has wings, it has like a weird-looking face, glowing green eyes, and a glowing green mouth, and has a snake for a tail. So you fight one. It's on a bridge. He flies around. He has a couple attacks. After you either inflict enough damage on the first one, or a certain amount of time goes by, like, I don't know, 90 seconds, 2 minutes, something like that, a second one joins in. So if you haven't done much damage to the first one, if you've been like passive-aggressive, like waiting it out, then you have to fight 2 of them with, and the second one comes in with full health. Unlike the Bell Gargoyle fight in Dark Souls, where the second one comes in with like 30% health. So this obviously makes the battle quite a bit more difficult. I was lucky in this playthrough that the second one came in when the first one only had like 3 or 4 hits left. So it was basically like fighting one, killing it, and then just fighting another one, as opposed to having to fight 2 at the same time. And I also would assume by this point everyone knows that there's a trick to fighting the Man-Eaters where you can kill one of them before you even enter the fog gate, where you can stand at the fog gate to the boss, I think on the far right, take out a bow and arrow, and if you aim it at the fog gate, you can see through and see a Man-Eater like standing, and you can shoot him with arrows and it'll actually hit him. It's some sort of glitch or bug, because you can't usually ever attack the bosses through fog gates, but you can kill one before the battle even begins, ensuring that you only ever fight one at a time. And this is the way that I fought Man-Eater the first time, because this is how the friends that I was playing with showed me how to do it. So that's how I fought him the first time. And on subsequent playthroughs, I've probably fought him 3 or 4 times in total. I've fought him more traditionally, like with melee. So that's him. He is considered one of the harder bosses in the game, but again, I didn't have a huge problem with him. The final boss of Tower of Latria is the Old Monk, which I did talk about in the last episode. He can summon an actual player that's trying to invade in that area. My experience is that it happens very, very rarely. Even back in 2010, when the game was, I assume, still very popular and a lot of people were playing, I never ever got a human summoned into that battle. It's always been the NPC, which, if there's no humans available, it will summon an NPC character that acts kind of like a a human PvP player. It has like the claw weapons that go on your hands, so it has unbelievably short range, and it has like a homing soul arrow spell that it can shoot at you. And that's it. It's really very simple. So not too much to say about that. The room is littered with chairs for whatever reason. And this is the boss that has that ridiculous, I think it's called the Xanthus crown or Xanthus cloth. The intro movie for the old monk, it's like a decayed corpse basically sitting on a giant throne. And he has this huge flowing dress basically. It's like a big blanket or something, but it's gigantic. And when he summons in a player or an NPC character or whatever, the yellow dress thing flies off and it twirls itself around on top of the head of whoever is the invader, and then you can get that as something to wear, and it looks ridiculous. And I think that's why people like it, because it looks so ridiculous compared to the rest of the game, which is, you know, very serious, very somber, very heavy. This is like the most ridiculous helmet you could possibly wear in any video game ever. Even more silly than the symbol of avarice, I think, which is just a mimic head, a treasure chest with a giant tongue lolling out of it. I think this one's more ridiculous. And this particular helmet, speaking of things that appear in other Souls games, started in this game, and I think there's a version of it in all 3 of the Dark Souls games. I'm pretty sure it's not in Bloodborne. I know for a fact it's in Dark Souls 3, and I believe it's in Dark Souls 1, and I want to say it's probably in Dark Souls 2 as well. I haven't checked that, and I'm not going to because I just don't feel like it, but I feel like that's the case. So that's World 3, where we're getting through the game. We're doing pretty good. World 4 is the Shrine of Storms, which, again, is another world I used to think was very, very difficult. And I had a little bit of a tough time with 4-2. I'll get there in a sec. 4-1, the boss is the Adjudicator, who is like the big fat guy. He has a cleaver in one hand. He has like a crown with a bird's nest on top of his head. And then he has like a gigantic tongue. You enter the battle arena, or the boss room, whatever you want to call it. You're like high up on these like concrete platforms, and there's stairs that lead down below. And you can go down and fight him, and if you stay too long in the upper areas, he like smashes him down with his long tongue. But he has like a blade sticking out of his stomach, like someone stabbed him and then it got stuck there. And you have to attack that to injure him, because otherwise you can't hurt him, because he has this big giant round body, and if you attack his body, your weapon just bounces off of it like he's made of rubber or something like that. So you have to attack this weird blade sticking out of his stomach. Attack it enough times and he like falls over. Then you can attack his head, that bird, and it does tremendous damage. You only really need to hit that bird probably like 8 or 10 times to kill him. So he's really not very hard. He has a very, very, very slow wind up. All his attacks are telegraphed beyond belief, and they're easy to dodge, so not a whole lot to say. I used to not like fighting him either. I remember specifically taking like 10 plus minutes to fight him because I was being so careful. I was so careful of his attacks and so very just afraid to get killed. And this time I just went in and smashed him good. Actually, he might have killed me once. I don't remember if it's this episode or episode 18 that I did a few hours ago that I talk about all the bosses that killed me. I'm pretty sure he killed me once actually, because I got like he has a giant cleaver, like I said, and he like brings it up very slowly and then slams it down. It's easy to dodge, but if you get hit by it, it does a lot of damage. And I think I got stuck like on him in a corner or something, and I couldn't move. So I think he killed me that way. But you beat him, and then you get to go to 4-2, which is a pretty tough level. It takes place mostly on cliff sides and like these weird inner caves, and it has tough skeleton enemies. It has the like manta ray guys flying around in the air that shoot the huge spikes, and it has these like almost invisible kind of monsters that if you kill, they'll respawn because there's like a Grim Reaper looking guy that like brings them back to life. So it's a pretty tough area. It's actually one of the tougher areas in the game. I should have mentioned it last episode, but I totally forgot. I didn't have it in my notes. But the boss of this area is the old hero, and again, he has a great mechanic that it's not very hard. He's blind, so he can't see you, but he has a very great sense of hearing, I guess. So if you make too many steps, if you roll too much, he can hear you, and then he'll turn around and try to hit you with his weapon. His attacks are very easy to dodge, and he's not a hard boss. He looks awesome. He's a gigantic guy. He like glows orange, and he has a really cool sword. It's like a curved sword. It's all ragged and messed up. It's very cool, but he's easy, especially if you wear the thief ring, which allows your steps to be like muffled. You can't be heard by enemies as much. So especially if you wear the thief ring, he's like no problem at all. It's very atmospheric though. It's a cool battle. And then the final battle of World 4 in the Shrine of Storms is the Storm King, and he's a gigantic version of the those weird manta ray guys that fly around and they shoot their spikes at you. He has like an intro movie where it shows him kind of flying in, and there's a bunch of those little guys like attached to him. So he's like 10 times bigger than the regular ones. And it takes place in this big giant area. So first you have to kill all or almost all of the regular guys flying around. There's like probably 15 of them just flying in the air shooting spikes at you. So once you kill a large majority of them, the Storm King comes out. And he's very big. And if you're a strictly melee character like I usually am, you cannot hit him. I mean, if you have a bow and arrow, you can. If you're a magic user, I believe you can attack him as well. But you fight him in an outdoor area, and at the end of this kind of outdoor area, it's almost like a graveyard. I think it actually might be a graveyard. But there's a sword that you can take. It's called the Storm Ruler. And if you play Dark Souls 3, you know that when you fight Yorm the Giant, there's a weapon you can find in his boss room called the Storm Ruler. And it works exactly the same as it does in Demon Souls. Which, when I played through Dark Souls 3, and I found it, I was very excited about that. I love connections to Demon Souls. Even though it's not a connection, it's more of like a fun little callback. But the Storm Ruler sword in Demon Souls, you, I believe, do the heavy attack, and it slams the sword down and shoots this giant funnel of like wind, like a big storm essentially. And that's the only way that I could hurt the Storm King. But it hurts him quite a bit when he flies in. He will fly towards you. And shoot giant spikes at you. But there's like a dilapidated house in the middle of the arena that you can kind of hide in. So once he shoots his spikes, he just kind of slowly flies. So you can hit him a couple of times with the Storm Ruler. He's not very hard, but it's a really fun fight. It's really cool. I called the old hero atmospheric. This one's even more atmospheric. It's very cool. Alright, finally is World 5, the Valley of Defilement. The first boss is the Leechmonger, who's the boss of 5-1. He's just a giant monstrosity, just made of leeches, entirely made of leeches. And the battle starts very high up. And you can walk down planks and like these little cliffs that move around in like a spiral shape all the way down to the bottom like pit of his arena, and then you can fight him down there. As with the other bosses in the Valley of Defilement, at least Dirty Colossus, he's weak to fire. So there's no pyromancy in this game, so you can't just have fire magic. But if you have any is it still charcoal pine resin? I don't think it is. Whatever the fire item is in this game that... Do you want to say anything about Demon Souls? About the bosses and the monsters?
Maybe.
Say something. It's okay.
I feel really...
Say something about the bosses. You watched me fight like 90% of them.
No, you don't have to be nervous. Nobody can see you.
I feel nervous.
You don't have to be nervous.
No one can see you.
This is my daughter. She's still awake. We had a bit of a bad dream incident, so she's been awake. And I'm trying to get her to talk about Demon Souls because she watched me play. I think I said last episode, I played almost 14 hours. She watched me play probably like 8 or 9 hours of that. So, and she really enjoyed it, even though she's only 3.5. Are you sure you don't want to say anything about the monsters? Did you like just one thing?
Maybe my baby will.
Your baby will say something about.
Blah 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 blah.
Thank you, Kara.
That from her mama.
Yeah, now that the podcast has been completely derailed, I'm gonna leave that in though, because that's the audience loves the family stuff. Final words. Valley of Defilement, the Leechmonger. He's not very hard. He's just a giant monstrosity that's made out of leeches. He has big arms that he like swings around and he can hit you with, and they actually hurt a lot. I was afraid of getting killed in that battle, but even so, he's not very hard. I think he can throw leeches at you and it slows you down and it makes your healing items not as effective. But even so, there's no reason anyone should have a problem with him. The boss of 5-2, which I've mentioned, his name is the Dirty Colossus. And he's kind of like a big hulking thing. I don't really know what he is, what he's supposed to be. He's just a big monster. He looks very cool. And he tries to punch you, and he throws like balls of flies at you, and he shoots flies out. And if the flies hit you, they can attach to you, and I don't even know what they do. It's negative, that's for sure. But beyond that, I'm honestly not sure. Again, he's made trivial with fire. If you apply fire to your weapon, he's much easier than the Leechmonger. You can just get up close to him, attack him, roll under his punches, and it's pretty easy. Okay, so that's the first two. The final boss in the Valley of Defilement is Maiden Estrella, who's just a normal woman, a maiden, basically, that you would find in any kind of Dark Souls game. She sits at the very, very, very bottom of the Valley of Defilement. One thing I like about the Valley of Defilement, you start at the very top and you just work your way down, down, down. The lore is basically that it's like where everything that's not wanted, or that's trash, goes. So anything that is not wanted just ends up there. And it just goes down, down, down very far. And Maiden Estrella is guarded by a man named Garl Vinland, who is decked out in like gold armor, and he has a giant mace or a hammer, and he guards her. So you have to kill him to get to her.
Hey,
And he's a
that's who you killed yesterday. The guy that what?
You gotta let Daddy do this then.
With the big sword, with the big hammer thing. That's who you fought yesterday.
I did fight him. Maybe not yesterday, but the day before. You're very smart. You have to fight Garl Vinland, who basically he stands and he's like an impenetrable wall that you have to fight. He's pretty defensive, actually. He'll only fight if you get real close to him. But so once you beat him, you have to go down a little farther and then fight the maiden, who basically does not fight back. She has the Wrath of the Gods spell, which like knocks you back and hurts you, and she sits in a plague swamp, and plague is like poison, but it works way faster. So it's like toxic. It's like the toxic of the Demon Souls universe. But otherwise, she doesn't fight back. It's a very interesting battle. It makes you feel like you are doing your whole quest is not really just. Because you're just going in and killing these monsters for no real reason. None of them do anything to you beforehand, so I don't know. But you kill her, and then that's that for World 5. Once you kill, I think, one Archdemon, which is any of the bosses at the end of the worlds, so Dragon God, Old Monk, Storm King, or Maiden Estrella, you open up the gate after the Tower Knight. Once you kill the Tower Knight in 1-2, you can't move forward in World 1 unless you beat a Archdemon, which is one of those ones that I just mentioned. If you beat, I think, just one of them, then that gate disappears. So once that gate disappears, you can go through World 1-3, and the boss is Penetrator, which I talked, not at length, but I talked a decent amount about in the last episode. He's a great boss. He's a knight. He has a huge sword. He swings it real fast. You have to dodge. You have to have good timing for dodges. He's aggressive. Not many Demon Souls bosses are aggressive. Him, Old King Allant, Flame Lurker, Man-Eater. That basically is it for aggressive bosses that like seek you out to fight you. Most of the other bosses, like, they just kind of stand around. If I think about it. So, He's very aggressive, but he's great, very, very underrated, I think. One of my favorite bosses in Demon Souls. Very, very, very fun. So finally, if you beat him, you get to World 1-4, and you get to fight, at the end, Old King Allant. And he kind of looks like Colonel Sanders, if you ask me. He has a like white goatee, he has like a white coat on, he has a sword. He has a sword, and he's very, very fast, kind of like Penetrator. He has a lot more attacks than Penetrator. Penetrator has like 3 or 4 main attacks, and Old King Allant has more. He can, as I've mentioned, he can close the gap very quickly. He can take soul levels from you. He has an AoE attack, which takes like 95% of your health. He's a very menacing boss. He's a very menacing boss, but he's very doable, as long as you don't get too overwhelmed. And you fight him in like this big arena. It's got some stairs, which really don't do anything, because he can close the gap even over the stairs. But if you fight him a few times and learn his move set, he's not too bad. Dodging really helps in this battle. I know shields do. That's kind of redundant to say, because shields help in every battle. But this is, again, this and Penetrator are like the prototypes for those like really great duel battles like Artorias and Fume Knight and stuff like that. So finally, once you beat him, you can go below the Nexus, which is the hub world. You can go below the Nexus and fight real King Allant. Old King Allant was just a fake one that King Allant made. I don't know the entire lore, so I can't really comment on it, but the guy with the white beard and the white coat is not the real king. The real king is down below the Nexus, and he's like just a blob monstrosity, because he got so corrupted by greed and power. And he barely attacks. He like rears up on his sort of front feet and like slams down on you, which I think does a decent amount of damage, but he's very easy. Just stay near his legs and hit him. He has, I think, the demon brand sticking out of his leg, which is pretty neat. So he's more of a lore boss, because he like talks the whole time, and it's interesting. It's not a difficult fight. It's very, very, very easy, but it's pretty cool still. It's an interesting fight to end the game with. And then after you beat regular King Allant, there are 2 endings you can get. You can either leave the arena and let the Maiden in Black lull the old one back to slumber, or you can kill the Maiden in Black, and I don't even remember what happens after that, because I've only done it once. But after that, that's it. The only thing I really need to talk about is the Vanguard tutorial boss, because when you start a new game in Demon Souls, you have the option to go through the tutorial area, which nobody that's played a Souls game for longer than 5 hours would need. But I went through it on this playthrough, and I've been through it a few times. There's a boss at the end. His name is Vanguard. Again, speaking of Demon Souls bosses that evolved into different bosses, Vanguard is the blueprint for the Asylum Demon. They're the exact same monsters, but the Asylum Demon is just much more detailed and has a few different attacks. The Vanguard is a big, fat, gray demon. He has little wings. He has a giant, like, cleaver, and he attacks in a similar way that the Asylum Demon from Dark Souls does. But when you find him in the tutorial, he's supposed to kill you. He can kill you in like 3 hits max, because you have very little health. You have a weapon that's not upgraded, that's not very good. You only have like 5 or 6 crescent moon grasses, so you have to do it perfectly to kill him. I know you can kill him because people have done it. I tried to upload it to my YouTube, but I didn't have the patience. I did not have the patience to try to fight him. So one day I'm going to go through the tutorial and kill him. But until then, whatever. But he's the first boss, and he's supposed to kill you. When you die, you go to the Nexus. And that's kind of how the game starts. So he's supposed to be there to keep you in check in case you go through the tutorial and you feel like your ego is too big. The Vanguard will smash it down. And there's a Vanguard mini-boss in World 4-1 that you can kill, and he's obviously much easier. I think that's about all I have. I went very off script. I don't have any kind of notes or anything. I think I said I was going to talk about easiest, hardest, and the best looking bosses, but I've kind of already gone over all that stuff. Quickly, the easiest bosses would be Phalanx, Leechmonger, Dirty Colossus, Maiden Estrella, and King Allant. I would say not the darkest. The hardest bosses are the Vanguard Tutorial, Old King Allant, and the Man-Eaters. And every boss besides that is basically easy. I think all the bosses in the game look really good. There's a few knights, like the Tower Knight is just a gigantic knight, Penetrator is just a knight. But there's a lot of monsters. Phalanx is a monster, Leechmonger and Dirty Colossus are monsters, the Armor Spider and the Man-Eater and the Flame Lurker, they're all monsters. Adjudicator is a monster, Storm King is a monster. So the game is really full of monster bosses, maybe more than any of the other ones, besides probably the original Dark Souls. And I love it. I love the look of the bosses, and just everything about the bosses I like. I love the names, I love the lore, I love the fights, even though a lot of them are not that hard. So, I think that's about all I need to do. I had to actually do 2 separate recordings because my daughter woke up and she, I think, had a bad dream, so I had to try to calm her down. So I stopped for like 2 hours before I started recording. So this is my part 2. I'm gonna put part 1 and 2 and part 1 and part 2 together and just make one episode. It's already a lot longer than I was expecting, so I'm gonna stop it here. Thanks very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed my rambling, semi-silly talk about the Demon Souls bosses. Next week is big episode 20. I don't know what it's going to be, but it should be good, and it will be on time. I promise it will be on time. So thanks everyone, and I will see you next week for the big 2-0.